How's it going? It's a Monday. It's December. It is Christmas season. We are red. We are green in the studio. I'm Thad Brown. This is the Endgame here on Rochester First. Remember the kids, all the ones who are getting presents from Santa this year, they all call it Rock One. Lots to get to today. The Bills coming off a big win over the Steelers. Look, no one is buying Super Bowl tickets just yet, but the season back on the rails. A lot of good things to talk about for the Bills from this game. How much of it is repeatable? I think there's a part that is fascinating enough to wonder if the Bills can keep going. So a lot of things to get to with the Bills. Josh Allen v. Cam Hayward. Who was right? Who was wrong? Who's making stuff up? We'll dive into that for sure. And college football had a ridiculous weekend of news. The playoff is down to conference championship week. There's 5 teams out there. At least 2 of them are going to be hopping mad after next weekend or next Tuesday, Monday, whatever, Sunday it is, when the playoff field is announced. Lane Kiffin in the middle of not one, but 2 giant controversies and a lot to get to from all the wild stuff that happened over the weekend. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Thanks very much for joining me today. Like I said, we are red and green in the studio. I am a Christmas fanatic. I will talk your ear off. We'll probably do a couple shows maybe down the road here about Christmas movies, Christmas music. I will say that the red and green here in the studio, it's first of all, it doesn't really clash with, it doesn't really go with the show colors. It kind of clashes, to be honest, with the blue and yellow. And that green and red, it is just gigundous in terms of its influence on everything. So I don't know how long I'm gonna be able to go with this. My original plan is I'm gonna do this for the whole month, every single show. I'm already wondering if I can make it through a whole segment like this. So we'll see if the red and green stays. But for now, it is December 1. Christmas season is just beginning. Every song is awesome. I haven't heard them in at least 11 months. I'm going through all the movies I can. Knocked out Fred Claus the other day. Super underrated, by the way. So there will be much Christmas discussion on this program between now and the 25th. But for today, let's get into the Bills stuff. And the number one place I want to start, not surprisingly, is with how well the Bills ran the ball against Pittsburgh. All the records they set. 249 yards as a team. That is the most ever by a visiting team in that stadium. Now, the stadium only opened in 2001, so it's not like the stadium's been open for 1,000 years and this is the greatest performance of all time. But still really good. Best opponent in 25 years against a team that usually has a really good defense. Not this year, but generally does. So pretty good. It's still the best rush performance by any opponent in any stadium in Pittsburgh in 50 years since the Bills with O.J. Simpson ran for 310 back in 1975. Josh Allen got his 76th rushing TD, which is the most ever for a quarterback, which by itself is a ridiculous number. The idea that Josh Allen, before he's even 30, has broken an all-time record even in this particular category is bananas. He is going to put that record on a shelf so high that no one is ever going to be able to not, let alone touch it or even find it going forward. If he stays healthy, 100 rushing touchdowns seems like a lock for Josh Allen. We'll see. But regardless, an incredible mark to have already achieved so far. So the Bills dominate with the ground game. And afterward, TJ Watt was just shaking his head because of, as he said, I've never seen a team be so successful. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here. I've never seen a team be so successful running the same play over and over and over. And we know with Joe Brady that his MO is if he finds something that he thinks his team can win at, he's just going to keep doing it. Even 2 or 3 or 4 plays in a row. It's just going to be the same thing over and over and over until you stop it. To me, it's his best quality because he will not sit back and think, well, this is working, but I want to look smart. So let me try and come up with this other thing that everybody will look at and say, wow, look how creative that is. Isn't he a genius head coach or offensive coordinator? Joe Brady doesn't do that. When he finds something that works, he's just going to pound it on you until you prove to him that you can stop it. I've not liked it at times because when Joe Brady goes the same play 3 times in a row, yeah, the first 2 you get 12 yards, but on the third one, when professional players on the other side, guys who get paid too, when they figure out what's going on, then they stop you for a loss of 2, and now all of a sudden you're in 2nd and 12. It happened early in that Pittsburgh game where they had 2 big runs in a row, and then in the third one, 2-yard loss, 2nd and 12, took a penalty, 2nd and 17, short pass, incomplete, off the field. So while I like the fact that Joe Brady doesn't try and, again, reinvent the wheel. When you do the same play over and over and over, you can get yourself in trouble. Well, what happened in this game is that I think Brady kind of realized that he had two things that were working pretty well. And I'm going to get a little deep in the weeds here football-wise, okay? What the Bills appeared to be doing, and you never really know because you're not in the play calling room, but if you do enough work, you study enough film, you take the time to learn what these schemes are about, what indications show you what the Bills are running, you can kind of get a good idea of what football teams are doing. So what it very much looked like the Bills were doing most of this game is running two particular run schemes, duo and zone, primarily with the Bills inside zone. There's a little bit difference. Inside zone, outside zone. It's exactly what you think it is. The Bills run a little more inside zone. What the Bills would do almost every single play of the second half, they lined up in a formation that was strong to the right. So you got the 5 offensive linemen, center, 2 guards on each side, 2 tackles on each side. Then the Bills would put 1 or 2, mostly 2, tight ends to the right, maybe with a receiver over there as well, so that the formation is heavy to the right. And what they would do off of that is either run duo, which is a downhill, strong kind of run scheme where primarily offensive linemen are double teaming tackles and just pushing guys forward, but it's also a run scheme you generally run to the tight end side. So when the Bills line up with their formation strong to the right, this handoff would be to the right. And then the running back kind of bounce from there, read blocks, whatever. So that would be one thing the Bills would run out of this formation. The other thing they would run is the zone. But the zone the Bills would run, you can run it both ways. Zone, the Bills would run it to the weak side. And that's less of an aggressive blocking scheme. It's more passive. It's more, as it sounds, offensive linemen are blocking to a zone. And the running back can then read. Generally, there's 3 angles the running back can take. You can either bounce it all the way outside or run straight ahead, which from the angle the handoff would be more or less off tackle. Or what you'll see James Cook do about 98% of the time is bounce it back inside. So whenever you see James Cook get a handoff to the left, and then it looks like he's cutting it back to the right, that is generally zone scheme. And generally the way it works best for the Bills is for Cook cutting back in. But what happened in this game was Joe Brady had the same look all night long. Again, strong right. And then either you'd hand off right in this power duo scheme or hand off left into this more passive zone scheme. And the Steelers couldn't figure it out. This was all the Bills did all night. I charted it today. Let me call my numbers here. Now, look, it's only 2 schemes. You know, it's reasonable to think that a professional defense would be able to figure out 2 plays. But they are different enough, even if we're just talking about left and right, that I can understand the Steelers having trouble with it. And it was nothing the Bills had to expand upon. There were a couple bootlegs in there, a couple of play action passes. But for the most part, they just ran this, especially in the second half, all night long. And for all the times that Joe Brady has gone to the same play over and over and then eventually doesn't work or a team gets a beat on it. For example, something the Bills have done a lot the last month or so is a counter run. That's the one where you'll see Reggie Gilliam line up as like a fullback in the backfield, and then he leads James Cook one way or the other. The Bills have ran that so much that teams mostly know how to stop it. And look, the Bills have run this inside zone play all year long. It is their number one go-to play this season. So it's not like the Steelers have never seen it, have no idea what to do with it on film. But when you matched it with the duo run, the Steelers apparently couldn't keep up. And I do wonder if maybe this is something the Bills can keep doing the rest of the year. Because the single play that Brady would repeat, again, would get stopped almost all the time. But with this, you cannot, as a defense, sit on one tendency. You have to worry about both. And the way the Bills ran it in this game, they ran it in both directions. And although zone and inside zone and duo are pretty similar. In fact, there's a joke amongst offensive line, online people, analysts, that figuring out whether a run play is duo or inside zone is nearly impossible. So they are similar schemes. But the way the Bills employed it in this game, Pittsburgh really could not sit on one or the other. So it was a incredible game plan from Joe Brady. And to be able to do what you do as a coordinator, what Joe Brady is clearly most comfortable with, and make it effective in this way, like the criticism of Joe Brady is that he's not creative enough, that he can't, again, go out of the box too far and really be effective. That when he tries, he's got some decent designer plays that hit every once in a while, some of those 3rd and 4th down conversions. But in general, having him come up with something brand new is where he seems to be least effective. And this game plan wasn't that. This game plan didn't have to be complicated. This is just do the things you've been doing all year, but do them. First of all, you got to be effective at them. You got to win. And the offensive line was doing that all night long. And we'll talk about the backup tackles in a second here. But this didn't have to be out of the box stuff. This is exactly what Joe Brady does well. This is the Bills going to their bread and butter, going to their strength over and over, and forcing a team to stop it without being ridiculously predictable when you run the same play over and over and over. And this, to me, seems like an idea the Bills might be able to stick with and be successful with more often the rest of the year. I don't know. Look, again, it's 2 plays. So I would imagine good professional defenses will be able to say, okay, if you get this, do A. If you get B, do B. But regardless, I do think this is an improvement upon what we've seen from the Bills coordinator so far this year, and potentially something the Bills can keep doing. And to that point, separate of whether or not the Bills could do this next week or the week after or whatever, in this game, relying on things that you've done all year long made sense with 2 new guys on the field. Don't make it too complicated when you're already changing each side of the offensive line. You've got a new tackle, a guy who is not, now look, they've played with these other starters in training camp, and Ryan Vandermark's had a number of starts already, 2 or 3. So there has been some experience with these guys on the field. Alec Anderson, who played right tackle all night, was the 6th offensive lineman in a lot of plays last year. So there is experience, certainly with the starters, but not like this, not throughout a game, not as the guy in the field, not as the person you're relying on to play that tackle all game. So especially with both of them together. So this was new. So when you already got things changing at both tackles, don't walk into this game with something ridiculously brand new scheme-wise. Go back to what you do well and do it over and over and over. And that's what they did. And again, it fits the offensive coordinator, his strength. It fit the strengths of this offensive line, because I think both Vandermark and especially Anderson are better run blockers than they are pass blockers at this point. Certainly in this game, going against TJ Watt and Herbig and Highsmith and all these great edge rushers the Steelers have, you're much better from the Bills' point of view running at that than trying to pass against it. And another part of the Brady game plan I liked a lot was the fact that when the Bills did pass, it was quick stuff, it was slants, it was screens. So Joe Brady hit this one out of the park in so many different ways. And for a guy who, coming off the Houston game, there was no comment I got on social media more than Joe Brady doesn't know how to use what the Bills have. Joe Brady doesn't know how to get players into the right position. And yeah, that might still be true in the receiving room, in the passing game. But the way he operated this run game was perfection. It was simple. It played to his offense's strengths, and it worked all night long, and he never went away from it. He never did anything else. He never bothered to try, well, let's try this other thing I have in the bag. No, stay with this all night. Make the Steelers stop it. And they couldn't. And they couldn't. To the point where TJ Watt, a guy who's going to walk straight into the Hall of Fame when his career is over, is shaking his head, talking to the media afterwards, saying, I'm out of words. That was literally something he said following the comment about, I've never seen a team do the same thing over and over and be so successful. So an incredible night for Joe Brady, for sure. An absolute game. I mean, you talk about people with the Bills who needed a big game. Joe Brady got it right there. The other thing I really liked about this game, from the Bills' point of view, was the defense. In general, but also in particular, the way the secondary covered in this game. The Steelers only had 166 yards of total offense. 58 rushing. That was the Bills' best run defense performance of the year. But the more impressive part of this was a game the Bills played well on that side of the ball from start to finish. How many times this year has the Bills allowed 20, 15, 16 points in the first half, whatever it is, and then, you show up in the second half, Atlanta, Houston, Miami to a degree. But by the time you get to the second half and play well, the damage is already done. Your offense is down 24-14 to the half, 21-13, whatever it is. They're playing catch up. They never do. You lose the game. We've seen that story play out 3 or 4 times this year. Not in this game. In this game, this Bills defense was ready to go from the jump. You think about the first possession of the game, the Bills throwing an interception. Right off the bat, you've got the defense not in ridiculous field position, but the Steelers got the ball around the 40. They're immediately in, I need 1 or 2 first downs for a 3. And the Bills got a 3-and-out defensively, got Pittsburgh off the field, and saved Buffalo from giving up points in that spot. Now, they couldn't do it on the second one, on the James Cook fumble, but those were the only points the Bills allowed all game, a 39-yard field. Beyond that, they just about completely shut Pittsburgh down. The only team the Bills have done a better job on this year was the Jets, who had 154 total yards. So the fact that we're talking about the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf in the same breath with Justin, I sometimes don't even throw for 50 yards passing Fields, tells you how good the Bills defense was in this game. And they only did it with a 1 sack. The Joey Bosa play was the only sack they had in the game. Aaron Rodgers is generally a guy who gets the ball out pretty quick. Didn't do it much in this game for a number of reasons that we're going to talk about in a second. But this defense played really well from minute 1 to minute 60. And against the run and against the pass. The thing, as much as the run defense had its best game of the year with the 58 yards rushing, I was more impressed with what the Bills did down the field for a couple reasons. Number one, how many times did we see Aaron Rodgers, like I said, a guy who likes to get the ball out of his hands fast? How many times in that first half was he dancing around, looking for help, looking for somebody? He moved around in that pocket quite a bit, more than I thought he would, especially for a guy who is nursing broken bones in his non-throwing wrist, someone who I'm sure wanted no part of taking hits from players 15, 20 years younger than him and 50 and 70 pounds heavier than him. I would think the goal for Pittsburgh with Rodgers in that game was for him to get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible, and he did not have enough opportunities to do that. I think because, and I want to watch the film more to see it, the Bills were doing a great job of covering down the field. I thought the secondary, including the linebackers, had a really, really good game. And the Joey Bosa sack was a nice example of that because Joey Bosa gets the sack and the credit for the forced fumble, and it looks like your classic elite pass rusher play. But it took 4.5 seconds. I timed it. 4.5 seconds before Joey Bosa got to the quarterback. Normally 3 is kind of like your Mendoza line for the ball is usually out by then. So the fact that he got an extra 1.5 seconds to rush is a credit to the secondary. In particular on that play, Cole Bishop is one-on-one with DK Metcalf. If I told you straight out of the Baltimore game, when Derrick Henry was stiff-arming Cole Bishop through the ground, that later on in the year, Bishop versus DK Metcalf would lead to a Bills defensive touchdown. You would not have bought it for a second, but that's what happened. Now, the coverage wasn't superb, but it was good enough. It was good enough to get Aaron Rodgers to look somewhere else, and eventually there were no somewhere else's left, and it's a fumble and a touchdown. And the Bills did that most of the night. The other part of the coverage thing that I really liked, Pittsburgh came into this game top 7 in tight end production, receptions and receiving yards. The tight ends for the Steelers have the second most, and probably still do, the second most touchdowns in the NFL among tight ends. So this was a, not dangerous, but certainly competent and productive tight end group for Pittsburgh with Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith and Darnell Washington, guys who different body types, different skills. And for the most part, the Bills totally shut it down. And it's not a surprise because the Bills this year have been number 1 by a lot when it comes to preventing tight end production. So this was good on good. This was elite on elite, or elite in the Bills' case and almost elite in Pittsburgh's case. And Buffalo's good was way gooder. I know it's not proper English. Cut me some slack. To be able to win a battle when it's your strength against their strength, I was pretty impressed by. And again, this Steelers team is not overly good top to bottom. They're not. They might be 6-6 and leading a division and certainly in contention to make the playoffs. This is probably an average at best team. They don't statistically do anything well except for creating sacks and turnovers. And they were on their way to another big turnover game after the first half. The offense took a little while to get their act together. But beyond that, they don't intimidate you with their receiving options as much as DK Metcalf should. They don't have much of a running game. Defensively, if they're not getting after the quarterback and having to defend the run, you saw how vulnerable they can be. As much as the Bills' run game was good on its own, that Pittsburgh run defense has been up and down, to put it lightly. Now, in general, they've done a good job, the Steelers have, in limiting teams from going berserk as a team. That 249 is better than like the last 3 games the Steelers have combined. But it's still not a really good run defense, especially not by Steelers standards. But the Bills dominated. And the number one takeaway from this game, and I talked about it in my column at RochesterFirst.com, is that the Bills and their fans, more so the fans, who had 10 days to commiserate after that Houston loss. Many of those fans wanted Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott shot directly into the sun. That team showed you Sunday against Pittsburgh, they can still bring the fastball. They can still take a run game, take over a game, give the ball to James Cook 32 times, and win going away. And oh, by the way, the defense might be getting a little better, especially in the back end. Now, does this, again, no one is buying Super Bowl tickets right now, but it was an encouraging win on a number of levels. And if you're a Bills fan and you want to be more optimistic about their situation coming out of this, I think it's totally warranted. And I don't mean just, hey, they're going to be fine and they're going to make the playoffs, but that the Bills, maybe in this game, found a few things that they can build on going forward. There are more games to find out how real all that stuff is. And one of the nice things about the Bills' schedule here is that, unlike early in the year when it was the Jets and the Dolphins when they were bad and the Saints, to where you looked at the schedule and thought, what am I learning about the Bills? This is just Buffalo walking over cupcakes. The next few weeks are not going to be that. It is Cincinnati on Sunday. And yeah, their defense is abysmal, but it's Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. That will be a challenge for sure. Then it's the New England road game, which we know is going to be a titanic matchup, even if the division really isn't on the line for that. And then after Cleveland, it's Philadelphia in Buffalo. So 3 of the next 4, and you can include these last 2 against Pittsburgh and Houston. We're in a nice run here, 5 out of 6 games, where the Bills are really getting tested week after week. Maybe not Super Bowl elite level tests, but these are not walkover games, not any of them. Even the Browns game in a couple weeks in Cleveland, that defense is still pretty ridiculous. So the Bills are getting pushed week after week after week. And if they go on a run here, which is not out of the question for this team, we've seen the Bills on a number of occasions the last few years struggle in mid-October through Thanksgiving and then turn it on at the end of the year. I don't have an explanation. I don't think the Bills do. If they did, they'd turn it on sooner. They have for the longest time. Bobby Babbitt says this just about every week now, that we're trying to peak at the end of the year, not now. So I don't know how you actually construct a team that does that, but the last few years, the Bills have been able to figure it out to improve how they're playing for the last 5 weeks of the year over the middle 5 to 7 weeks. If the Bills went on a run here, if I told you right now the Bills would finish at 13-4, I don't think many Bills fans would be stunned. Maybe a little surprised, but not stunned, because we've seen the Bills do this before. Now, this team, I don't think is quite as good as maybe last year or the year before. I think there are still big questions about the passing game that we might talk about later. I think the defense, certainly when it comes to stopping the run, is a huge question mark, even if they're coming off their best game of the year. And the schedule down the stretch, I think, is tougher without really diving in and comparing it to the last few years than what the Bills have gone through 2 years ago when they made that great run, or in previous seasons where the last few games of the year have turned into a winning streak. The idea that Buffalo runs the table with New England and Philly and the Cincinnati offense left to play seems unlikely. But again, I don't think it would stun anybody if it happened. The other big controversy out of the Bills game on Sunday was from defensive tackle Cam Hayward, who said afterward on that first half play where Josh Allen ran the ball for a short first down, and then there was some pushing and shoving afterward. Hayward said that Josh Allen need him in the stomach and that it's not fair that quarterbacks get protection, but he does not. And he's technically right about the last part. Here's the thing, okay? I've watched this play now from 3 different angles. From the broadcast angle and then a couple different low angles from local reporters, including Scott Swenson from WIVB in Buffalo, who covered the game for us and for WIVB. And even though there are 3 totally different angles, I can't see what anybody is mad about in there. Now, Cam Hayward said that not only did Josh Allen knee him in the stomach, but then Josh Allen owned up to it later, saying, I had to get you off of me somehow. So on the play, Allen is tackled and Hayward's on top of him. And Hayward does have a hand on Josh Allen's arm and then pushes the leg a little bit. Some on social media have claimed that Hayward was pushing off Allen to get up or holding Allen's arm down. There might be a little of that in there. I don't think there's a whole lot of contact to where Allen would be justified to knee someone in the stomach, as Hayward claimed. But the other side of this is that I don't see anything in any of those pieces of video that indicate anybody kneed Cameron Hayward in the stomach, let alone Josh Allen. Now, Hayward was mad enough, and I retweeted it on my X feed last night, reposted it, whatever, Thad Brown 7. So if you want to see Hayward's comments, you can go there. Hayward is upset enough about it that I can't believe nothing happened. And like I said, even said that Josh Allen owned up to what happened, that he said, yeah, I did it. I'm paraphrasing. I did it because I was trying to get you off of me. That I can't believe nothing happened. Something had to happen at the bottom of that pile or as Allen was getting up. They got Hayward so fired up that 3 hours later, he's still hot about it talking to media. You can imagine that the Steelers defense was probably a touch frustrated after the way that game ended, after the amount of rushing yards they gave up. But even so, I don't think Cam Hayward would make something up about what happened in that situation. But through 3 angles of video, I can't see a thing. And I can't even see a thing that would cause Josh Allen to be so agitated as to warrant even making an action like that understandable. Now, Allen didn't really talk about it later. He did address the general back and forth, the verbal yapping after the play, and said, yeah, it might have fired him up a little bit. Athletes are funny in that they will use anything in the world to get them motivated, even to the point of inventing motivation for themselves. But when you ask them about it later, they won't let on to the fact that it really motivated them at all. So Hayward was mad about, I don't know what. He claimed Josh Allen did something that I can't see, but he was still really mad about it to the point where he's answering multiple questions about it afterward. So I think I'm going to conclude on this probably being a big nothing burger. I don't know why Hayward was upset. I don't see anything that he or Allen have a right to be upset about. I know as a quarterback, if you're on the ground and anybody is doing anything that might come close to injuring you, you're going to be a little touchy for sure because of how much is on the line. I've never heard of a quarterback getting injured at the bottom of a pile. Again, if it's going to happen to any quarterback, it'll probably be Josh Allen. But I would imagine that's the last spot that you want to risk an injury with really nothing to be gained there. If Josh Allen hurts a shoulder diving for a first down, yeah, you don't like it, but you live with it. If Josh Allen hurts a shoulder because some 300-pound defensive tackle pulls on him or pushes on him wrong at the bottom of a pile, yeah, I would be upset about that if I was a quarterback. I would be a little hyper protective of that if I was a quarterback. But watching the video of this, I can't see much that really warrants Allen or Hayward being upset about it. But somehow I guess he was. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more from the Bills game here. We'll talk a little bit about something else that got the Bills fired up in this game. And I'm going to dive into the college football playoff. I got lots of takes. Notre Dame fan, so I'm a little biased. But who's in and who's out, I think that's yet to be decided. And I think it's very much a fascinating question. So we'll address both after that. This is the Endgame. I'm Thad Brown. You're watching Rochester First, but the cool kids, they all call it Rock One. We're back after this. Thad Brown here with you again, second half of the show on a Monday, December the 1st. Let me, I found the breakdown I had here of the Bills run game from yesterday. What I have it at. So I had, let's see, the Bills as a team ran for 249. How many carries they have as a team? I think it was something in the 40 range. Hang on one sec. I got it. All right, 51 carries for 249 is what the Bills had overall. Of that, I had 31 for 193 that I thought was either duo or inside zone. So when we talked earlier in the show about how the Bills kind of ran the same couple of plays over and over, so it was 31 of 51 carries, which is about 60%. But it was 191, get the number again, 193 of 249 yards. It's about 80% of the Bills' yardage, about 77%. Of the Bills' run game production were just those two plays against the Steelers. Keep it simple, especially when you have new guys in there, and Joe Brady did exactly that against Pittsburgh. Now, the one other point I want to get to from this Bills-Steelers game, you want to talk about guys being fired up. The Josh Allen run before the field goal at the end of the first half, where Patrick Queen hit him late. And they said on the broadcast it was late, and I thought it was late too. And I think most Bills fans thought so. It should have been a flag. Everybody thought it should have been a flag. It wasn't a flag. It wasn't the most egregious miss in the world. The hit was not in the head and neck area, which will often get you a flag. But it was late. It should have been 15 yards. Regardless, the Bills afterward, many players said that got them fired up. Sean McDermott said, yeah, that created a stir on the sideline. And I think there was an intimation that the game changed on that play. Now, some of this, I think you got to realize the mechanics of how interviewing works in a locker room after the game. Because if someone brings it up, and normally a question like that won't be prompted by a reporter out of the blue. Maybe a play like that was certainly emotional enough. There were offensive linemen, as you'd expect, running to the aid of Josh Allen after he took the hit. So I don't know whether it was prompted by a reporter on its own. But regardless, once one guy says it, then it becomes something that we want to talk to all different players about. So if I hear player A say it, I'm going to go to player B and say, hey, player A said that got you fired up. Did you think so too? Because it is an interesting story angle, no matter how directly related to the game it might be. So as a result, multiple players got the same question. Hey, players have said this got the team fired up. Do you think so also? Now, again, understanding how a locker room interview session works, when I say to a professional football player, it looked like your quarterback got cheap shotted, did you get emotionally juiced by that? There's not a single player that's going to say, nah, it was no big deal. I didn't care. No one's going to say that. They're all going to say, oh, yeah, for sure, it got me fired up. Now, it doesn't mean the Bills are lying. I'm sure legitimately it did. When your quarterback takes a shot that looks like it should be 15 yards, whether it's called or not, especially in a game like that where there has already been John, those two teams were pushing and shoving the whole way through. Yeah, I expect there to be juice on the sideline when something like that happens. So I don't discount for a second that the Bills were a little charged up seeing Josh Allen take that hit. Now, did it impact the game? And the Bills players never intimated that that was the case. They all said we got fired up. There wasn't anyone who said, and that's why we won. So maybe it helped, but keep in mind after that happens, the Bills get to 4th and goal at the 3, and then they false start and take them out of a situation where I think they would have gone for a touchdown, and they kick a 3. So whatever motivation emotionally was built up by that hit was not effective in that situation. And then it's halftime. So the idea that the Bills are going to stay charged up all the way through 13 minutes of sitting around in a locker room during a halftime, it's not impossible, but I have my doubts. And the play that really flipped the game, it wasn't even an aggression play. If you want to tell me the Bills were all jacked up because of that hit, and then in the second half in the first play, Joey Bosa just bull rushed an offensive tackle and smashed into Aaron Rodgers and caused a fumble, then yeah, I'll buy a little more that the emotion played a part of it. But like I said before, it took Joey Bosa 4.5 seconds to get to the quarterback. That wasn't an aggression defensive edge rusher dominating a play. That was no one was open downfield and eventually someone's going to get to the quarterback kind of play. And good job by Joey Bosa to get the ball out. And that can't be discounted as nothing because it takes a skill to force a fumble. But I don't know how related to the emotion it was. Now, the thing about this game, not only did it turn on that play, but then Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. 3 plays later, Mason Rudolph is in throwing a terrible interception that really wasn't based on much the Bills did on defense at all, other than being in the right position coverage-wise and waiting for the stupid backup to do a stupid thing. And then 2 plays later, or 3 plays later, I think it was, James Cook's running for 30 yards down inside the goal line. The Bills convert on a 4th and goal, and now it's a 2-score game and the Bills have total control. That, to me, sounds more like how football goes sometimes. That, to me, sounds like the Steelers had worse players and the Bills had better players, and the better players started making plays. So I don't know how related the emotional charge of that hit was. I do 100% believe the Bills when they say they were not happy about it, but I think there was a feeling or a thought that the two things were related, and I have my doubts about that part at the very least. All right, let's talk college football because it is argue about the playoff season, which frankly, I find a fascinating season every year to try and figure out how do you justify Team A over Team B over Team C when they don't play each other most of the time, when they don't play a similar schedule most of the time. It is a fun argument, even if most arguments on social media quickly leave the realm of fun into the realm of annoying. But I think what we've had here is, well, first of all, what I want to say is, as a Notre Dame fan, and I think other teams' fans should buy into this as well, not as easily as Notre Dame fan will. I love the fact that Notre Dame can lose 2 games at the start of the year and still be alive at the end of the year. Pre-12 team playoff, losses in weeks 1 and 2 essentially end your season. Yeah, you can still go to a bowl, but really no one but degenerate gamblers care about the Citrus, Alamo, Sun, MasterCard Bowl anymore. So don't tell me that there's still something to play for, because when only 4 teams made the playoff, or when it was just 2, the BCS era, you lose 2 games, your season's over. But now, Notre Dame lost their first 2 games of the year, and the rest of the season was fascinating. Maybe not each individual game, because Notre Dame won many of them by like 50 points. But regardless, the idea that those games all still mattered was a good thing. Alabama lost their opener to Florida State, lost later to Oklahoma. In a pre-playoff era, their season would be done. I know it's Alabama, and there are still other ways that maybe an SEC team can get in, but the idea now that just win your conference and you're in is great for college football. Even Texas, who has 3 losses, is going to stand on a table for the next week and a half and say, we deserve to be in, and their argument is not ridiculous. So for anyone who argued, and I remember this was the argument, you don't want to have a playoff because then you might have Ohio State play Michigan in the regular season, and then they play again in the playoff, and now that rivalry game that everybody loves doesn't matter. And has it turned out that way? Not one bit. All these games still very much matter, including Ohio State, Michigan over the weekend, to where Michigan is not making the playoff no matter what, although I don't know if they had a Big Ten championship opportunity regardless of that, and Ohio State is not missing it no matter what. That game still was super important and the biggest game of the day over the weekend. So the college football playoff, from that point of view, has worked gloriously. Now let's get into the argument part. Number one, I think BYU is the easiest case to discuss because they got to beat Texas Tech. There's just, you haven't You haven't won enough games over good teams. I know the Utah win is solid, but when you get boat raced by the one playoff caliber team you play, then you just don't have an argument. And I don't care how good the rest of your strength of schedule is, or the fact you only have the one loss to Texas Tech. So BYU's got to win to be in. Even if they play Texas Tech close, assuming nothing else ridiculous happens, I don't think BYU gets in unless they win that game. Texas is the other relatively simple case. Look, they have a number of really good wins. I don't think I can remember a 9-3 team that has been able to put together a more convincing case to be in a playoff. The number of teams they've beaten, the number of good playoff caliber teams they've beaten, really makes me wonder if they should still be a part of this. But the more I thought about it over the weekend, you can't lose to a trash team like Florida. You just can't. That's, especially when you compare it to other teams. Yeah, Miami's got a couple of losses that look bad. The Alabama-Florida State loss back in week 1 isn't pretty by any stretch. The BYU loss to Texas Tech was a blowout. But you can't, none of them compare to blowing a game to Florida, who went, 3-9 this year, whatever it was. And then on top of that, when you're comparing all these teams, you don't want to be the one that in Sesame Street fashion is not like the other. So when Texas has the 3 losses and no one else, at least at this point, does, that makes them stand out like the sore thumb. So you're out. So that leaves Notre Dame and Miami and Alabama. And I think there's a world where all 3 of them can get in anyway. But in terms of the three, I think Alabama is the one who should be in. And I think this is generally what most people think. When you look at Alabama's case, they beat 4 ranked teams. They beat Georgia. Yeah, the Florida State loss was bad, but it was week 1. It is so long ago, 3 months ago, that I tend to discount it more than if they had lost to Florida State 2 weeks ago. Because teams change a ton from week 1 to week 12, 14, whatever it is in college football. So, yeah, that's a bad loss. But since then, Alabama has only one other loss. It's to Oklahoma. They're one of the best teams in the playoffs. They beat Georgia. They beat 3 other ranked teams. Even if they go to the SEC championship game and lose, and I know they'd be a 3-loss team then, I still think Bama belongs in the playoff. So now we're back to the Notre Dame-Miami argument, which has been, I think, the best one all year in terms of this playoff field, because you have Miami having the week 1 head-to-head win, which carries a lot of weight as it should. And then Notre Dame, since that week 1 win, doing everything pretty much they possibly could outside of beating Texas A&M to put themselves in a spot to warrant a case. And again, as a Notre Dame fan, for the last few weeks, I've kind of been in the spot of, yeah, they lost, but they've got so many other things that are better than Miami. And I've actually reveled a little bit in Miami fan getting totally angsty. But there is no button you can push easier right now than telling Miami fan they don't belong in the playoff over Notre Dame. It is like poking a bear right now in the fun way, if there is such a thing as a fun way. So I've lived in the spot that Notre Dame belonged in the playoff over Miami. The more I look at it, especially after Miami handled Pitt just fine over the weekend, the more I really think Miami probably deserves a spot. Because the head-to-head win should carry a lot of weight. But Miami fan wants you to stick your head in the sand and pretend nothing else existed after that. That was the only game that was played in the history of football, and now we're deciding between Notre Dame and Miami right now, which no one does, and the committee won't do, and they shouldn't do. But the Miami win over Notre Dame is still the best win on the board among either team. Really, it might be the best win on the board among most playoff caliber teams. So not only do they have a head-to-head win, but Miami has the best individual win. The second best win for both teams is identical. It's Pitt on the road by virtually the same score. The game is an absolute non-tiebreaker when it comes to Miami versus Notre Dame. Now, after that, most everything else favors Notre Dame. But strength of schedule. Yeah, Notre Dame's better, but it's still pretty close. Notre Dame has the better losses, but I think losses should not be the end-all, be-all of deciding something. It's important. And the point that Notre Dame has that is the best for Notre Dame is that 12 out of 12 weeks, they've looked like a playoff team. There has not been a single week where they stumbled, where they looked bad. They have 2 losses, 1 to a Miami team who's right on the borderline by 3 points on the road. They have another loss to a Texas A&M team who's going to be top 8 at minimum by 1 point at home. And then after that, not only did they win their next 10 games, they hammered teams. They have 1 win this year by less than 14 points, and it was a 10-point win. So Notre Dame, every single week of the year, has looked like a team that's belonged in the playoff. Miami has not. Miami lost to Louisville and SMU. And the SMU loss looks worse because SMU fell on their face against Cal over the weekend. It's a really good debate, but when Miami has the head-to-head, has the better individual win, and has a strength of schedule that is very close to comparable, even as a Notre Dame fan, I come around to the side that if it were me, I think I'd probably pick Miami. Now, like I said, this is a absolute hot button, poke the bear kind of topic with Miami fan. I do think that you can go either way here and probably be right. I don't think Notre Dame over Miami is a terrible choice. I don't think Miami over Notre Dame is a terrible choice. As much as it's not fun to say that about a Twitter debate, because of course, someone has to be ridiculously wrong every time you argue about something on social media. There cannot be a situation where both sides are right, because what fun is that? Then you can't call people names when you're done. That's why everybody goes on social media, right? Because you want to be able to feel good about yourself and put someone else down that you've never met before. Okay, enough rant about that. Caleb Carr is in. It is time for, you see this, our weekly segment where we talk about the fun and exciting things that happen over the weekend. Here, I'm going to put you on so you can set up your shot. Kind of zoom yourself out a little bit there. Yeah. I don't know who comes on these shows in between our shows who is shaped so differently that has an angle that I have to like totally redo how the shot looks. Let me put your microphone on here. There you go.
Listen, I'm the tallest guy in the office,
Yeah.
so it's not. I don't look tall on camera. Well,
But
unless I'm out in the studio, then some people might know.
But you look short there right now, right? I mean, that was.
Well, I don't look short
no.
here.
When you first got on.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The
It
camera
was
angle,
like way.
Who sits there?
I don't know.
That's 6'8" in this building, right?
Nobody.
That doesn't have to be.
Nobody.
All right.
I like the Christmas lights, by the way. Got to point that out.
Is it too loud? I was wondering about that.
I don't think so. Okay, so it looks loud here, but when I look on the monitor, it doesn't look loud at all.
Really?
I think we're good.
We're staying with it
okay.
then. We're staying with it.
I was
then.
like, wow, it's really popping in studio.
Yeah.
But looking behind you, it looks good. It looks good on camera.
There you go, everybody. We're staying with this for at least a couple more weeks. All right. You see this. I'm going to go first. Remember, this is the world famous segment where we take a look at something that happened over the weekend. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty obvious that everybody knows about this.
All right.
Something cool that happened over the weekend to where, like, when you're going to the water cooler money, you're like, you see this? You see this thing happen? So my thing is Lane Kiffin, and really I could have gone like 7 ways with this. The way I'm going to go is with the reporter. And if you didn't see this, what happened was there's a Ole Miss reporter who wasn't happy because Lane Kiffin is leaving Ole Miss to go coach at LSU while Ole Miss is getting ready to play in the playoff. They're going to be in. But Lane Kiffin now is going to go take a new job before the playoff happened. I didn't even get into this. It's a whole different thing about why it's stupid that college football is set up this way. Mm-hmm. But separate of that, the reporter said, as a means to put down Kiffin, he said, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. He spelled hoe, H-O-E, but we know what we're talking about. Because they don't act right, is what the exact quote was. Let me see if I get it right. Yes.
I was going to say, you might want to make sure you have that one exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So we double checked it. And the reason, obviously, that Ole Miss fan is unhappy is because their team that's going to the playoff is going to be without their head coach. So
it's a pretty big deal.
One would think that would be a detriment to the success of your team. That being said, this comment by the reporter is so over the line. And I don't care what context you're using it in. I don't care what you're trying to point out. It is not a thing you say about anyone, period, like end of story, but anyone that you are covering in a professional setting or commenting on or analyzing. It is just a dumb comment. And the thing that really blew me away, now Lane Kiffin got mad about it and found the reporter and confronted him and say, you want to call me that to my face? We'll go in the locker room, which I'm not excited about. It's kind of your standard, I'm tougher than you, football guy response. Whatever. He still had a right to be mad. The fact that in the press conference, another reporter defended the original reporter saying, well, let me explain to you what he really meant. No, That's a over-the-line comment. You don't say that. And I don't care how much of a jerk Lane Kiffin is. I think most college football coaches probably have an ego that wouldn't fit into most rooms. But regardless, it is absolute one of the worst things you could say. So far over the line, it is indefensible. And this reporter went out after the whole thing happened and said, well, this is what I really meant. I wasn't calling him that. I didn't mean it directly. How else is he supposed to take it, A? And B, it is an indefensible thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that number one, there is absolutely no situation on this planet where making that comment towards anybody is okay or should be deemed okay. But even less so in a professional setting. Like this is his job. Like imagine, like there's one thing to, be saying that in your backyard during a barbecue with your friends, but it's another thing to say things like this in the office. And that's technically where they are. Like technically as a reporter, the office is
100%.
Twitter.
100%.
The office is the football field. Like the office is the press room. Like that's your office. So obviously that, but on the other hand of it, I kind of like Lane Kiffin going in addressing the reporter directly because I think
you mean kind of on the field when he did
on the field.
Okay.
I kind of like it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if I love the let's go to the locker room.
Right.
Like that's a little too much.
I'm with you both.
But
of those.
I
Yep.
like him going up and saying something to him because I think sometimes people get too comfortable sitting behind a screen and saying things, especially to professional athletes and coaches, because we view professional athletes and coaches as these like bigger than, like larger than life people, and we expect them to act in a certain way, and we expect like people say whatever they want to professional athletes, but if they say anything back, then it seems like, oh, you shouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Every once in a while, if you overstep the line as far as this guy did, someone should be able to say, no, you're not allowed to say that to me. So I give credit to Lane Kiffin for going up to him. I think he might have crossed the line a little bit, but I like that he at least addressed the problem.
He was closer to the line, that's for sure.
Yes, he was closer, yes.
I think
yeah.
the rule of thumb I've been trying to go with lately is don't write or say anything you wouldn't say to someone's face.
Yes.
Now, you can't 100% go that way because I've got to be able to say that Josh Allen made a stupid throw, even if I wouldn't go up to Josh Allen and be like, hey, buddy, I thought that throw was stupid. Exactly. But there is certainly a line for where you can follow that rule. All right, what do you got here?
I'm going to stay in the football world, the college football world, the FCS playoffs. It was Yale against Youngstown State. Yale started the first half with 3 turnovers in the first half. They were down 35-7 at halftime. Both teams opened up the second half. It was 42-14 with 7 minutes and 33 seconds left in the third, and Yale went on a 29-0 run to win the game. They scored on every single touchdown on every single second half possession except the final one, which was a just end of game situation. Youngstown State in the second half, they started with a touchdown, then they fumbled it, then they missed a 46-yard field goal, then they had a 3-and-out punt, and off that 3-and-out punt, it took one play. I'm going to try to get this guy's name right. Josh Pitzenberg, one play after the 3-and-out touchdown, had a 56-yard field goal, and that's what kind of gave them the lead. And then that punt was with 2 minutes and 47 seconds left. Youngstown State was still leading 42-36, and then right after that, 56-yard touchdown. That gave them the lead, and then Youngstown State had a turnover on downs. A big comeback, 28-point comeback halfway through the third quarter, and it's in a playoff game nonetheless, and now I get it. It's FCS. Some people are going to say whatever, but football is still football. Like, this is still high-quality football, and I think people often forget that. But a 28-point comeback in the third quarter is insane. Yale just absolutely exploded. And I believe this was without one of their star players, offensive players, went down injured earlier in the first half as well. So this was without one of their stars.
And they just whooped Harvard the week before. So it's been 2 really good weeks for Yale. And I'm going through this game. Yale missed a field goal early in the game, too, that obviously would have kept them in it. 21-0.
Or no, Youngstown State missed a field goal.
Oh, their logo is both Y, so
they're both Y.
That. Yes.
So Youngstown State in the first quarter had a touchdown. It went Youngstown State touchdown, Yale interception, Youngstown State touchdown, Yale punt, Youngstown State missed field goal, Yale punt, Youngstown State punt, Yale interception, Youngstown State touchdown, and then Yale got their first half touchdown, and then Youngstown State responded with a touchdown, and then they got another one later in the half as well. I mean, Youngstown State absolutely dominated the first half, and then Yale said, I don't know what they were drinking in the locker room, but they came out ready to go.
The winning touchdown, too, was a 56-yard run with 2 minutes to go.
56-yard run.
Fun game. I went when I was at Hofstra. They had football back then, and it was FCS. So essentially, I remember we broadcasted a couple of playoff games, one at Delaware, a game. So quick story about the Delaware playoff game. Delaware Stadium, okay, back in the 1990s or whatever. It's not a stadium. It's just 2 giant stands. So it's like literally like 100 rows, it feels like.
Wow.
But they have a press box on either side. So the main press box on the Delaware side, we broadcasted from the Hofstra side. We had terrible problems with our equipment, and we had to communicate, because you didn't have cell phones back in this era, by running to the press box office phone to make calls. So I spent like an hour pregame running down 35 steps from the visiting press box, running around the field, running up 35 steps, making a call from the home press box. Did that work? No? Okay. Running back down, running around the field, running back up to the other side, fix it again, run down, I did that for like an hour. I was the grossest I've ever been for any professional broadcast in my career at the end of that, even though it was like December.
Thad's really showing his age right now with the...
Yeah, the no cell phone thing?
Yeah, with the no cell phone thing.
I mean, you realize that like when I went to college, that's when email started. My first email was when I went to college. It was so cool that you could like I could send a message to someone just by sitting here at the computer. It was awesome. Little did I know where it would go. All right. Thanks to Caleb Carr for being in. That was fun as always. We'll be back again on Thursday talking Bills and Bengals. Take the over, everybody. I'm Thad Brown. This is the Endgame. You're watching Rochester First. The kids, they all call it Rock One. We'll see you again in a couple days.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.